draining, just so emotionally draining for us, just very emotionally draining. But again, when you step out on that court and a championship is on the line, then you can be tired after the game.
Okay, and that was Yolanda Moore from the Houston Comets, who won 2 championships. But now we're going to get the show on the road.
From the Israel Sports Radio Studios in Jerusalem, Israel, our nation's capital, it's Loose Live! There's your host, me, and Raphael Geller.
What up?
Always listen to Yolanda Moore. Pumps me up. That was a great interview. By the way, that portion of the interview where we ended it to start this show was her story about beating my Phoenix Mercury in Game 2 of the WNBA Finals 1998. That went to overtime. Mercury were up 1-0 in the series. So had they won that game, they would have won, as it was a best of 2 of 3. But that was not to be, and the Comets were victorious and champions again, repeat champions.
Right.
Still tugged to the heart? Well, not exactly. It tugged to the heart until 2007 when the Mercury got that Game 5 victory on the road against the Detroit Shock and won their first WNBA title, the first of 2. That's when the ghosts were exorcised and Mercury passed.
Anyways, now that we're done with that WNBA talk that not that many people are listening, probably interested in.
That's not true.
That's not true? All right.
Everyone loves the WNBA. WNBA, no one said they'd make it. They've been around 15 years.
That's true. That's true.
Actually, I think a little more than that, maybe 16. 06 was the 10-year season, and they had 10-year anniversary. They had the All-Star game at Madison Square Garden.
16 years,
which
yeah.
I attended. So 16 years. So those who thought the WNBA would make it, 0. WNBA, 16. Scoreboard, baby.
Though European women's basketball is much more popular and has more money in it. So
It's just because the WNBA loses $12 million a year doesn't mean they're not popular.
I guess you could look at it that way. But the Euro League is much different. Speaking of the Euro League, we're going to have AJ Mitnick on in a few minutes. He hasn't been on in a while because he was in the United States of America. I think probably with his family before he comes back here to continue his role of assistant coach or scout for Rishon LeZion, Maccabi Rishon LeZion. So very excited to have him on. It's been a long time, I feel like, since we had him on. We had him on, Ari, if you recall, at the Summer League. Kind of was our correspondent there. That was really cool.
So we'll talk to AJ. There's been some moves made in the Super League.
Right.
And we can discuss with AJ. Big moves actually regarding Barak Netanya, which is a team we're going to be broadcasting for this season, please God. So we'll talk with AJ about those moves and what it means to Barak Netanya, because not too long ago they made a Final Four appearance, and they're a team who can make some noise. And for those folks out there who believe Maccabi Tel Aviv can't be dethroned, again, playoff system is a not 7-game series. It's a one and done. Anything can happen. Ask Galileo Gilboa, who had Mr. Big Shot Jerry Pargo when they had the upset a few years ago. I believe 2010 was that upset.
Right. And, it's funny, Ari, I'm not sure we're even allowed to talk to him about other teams just because he works for Rishon LeZion, now that I thought about it. But we'll talk to him about Rishon LeZion and the Summer League. And they just signed a couple players from the U.S. So we're going to talk to him about that. Yeah, they signed Paul Carter a couple of days ago, the 13th, and he kind of is replacing Brandon Bowman, who we had on the show, Ari. I don't know if you remember that.
Sure.
We had him on right before the Final Four. Bobo, his name is.
He came on, I believe, the day of the game.
Yeah, he did. He came on. Unfortunately, they lost. I would like to think we weren't, part of that, but he was really nice to come on the day of the game.
How many shows could pull that off, honestly?
Yeah.
Get a player the day of the game.
Yeah, he was really nice. And he moved on to Korea. He was drafted in the Korean League, chosen 9th overall in the Korea draft, which is a really big money league, I'd say. I don't know how the competition is. We could ask AJ all these questions, and we will in a minute. But he went to Korea. A lot of players. I kind of want to ask him, Ari, Doobie Pick was writing an article talking about how something out of the 11 top players in the league have left for other places. More money.
Yeah.
Yolanda
Moore talked about that a lot of players don't play the WNBA because they can make more money in Europe.
Right. So Israel's a good league. I mean, it's a top 10 league in Europe, top 5 maybe even.
But they're going to have to pay up if they want to keep their stars.
Right, and they can't. I mean, these owners in Ashkel and Ashdod, I don't know if they can, but they don't want to. It's not their style. They're kind of like,
they're Jewish.
That's kind of like the Rays. It's kind of like everyone's the Rays, but a few teams, or the A's, or.
What do you mean everyone's the Rays?
Just like they don't pay, they want to win with a low budget. Think about it.
Maybe, well, the Oakland A's also did that.
Yeah, I said A's and Rays.
A's and Rays. Okay,
A's and
gotcha.
Rays. Yeah, and so
they want to come up with a formula and a system, and not just throw money at the thing.
Yeah, I mean, look at a lot of these stars. They became stars with these teams. Alex Tyus right now, who went to Europe, and Adrian Banks, who went to Europe, and from AJ Mitnick's Rishon LeZion squad, Derwin Kitchen, he went to Panathinaikos, which is one of the top 5 clubs in Europe. So, I mean, they get their career started off in Israel, which makes them probably very loyal towards Israel. But we'll start off and ask AJ about the upcoming season and what they have in store. They lost a lot of talent from that squad, but they have a very good coaching staff led by Effie, of course. And AJ's worked under a lot of great coaches. Also knows Dan Shamir, who's the coach of Cholon. But we're going to dial him up right now and speak to AJ. And then just to give everyone a heads up, at 11:30 out there in the States and 6:30 here, Danny Knobler from CBS Sports baseball senior writer. What a great time, Ari, after the
perfect game.
Perfect
the third
game.
one. And we'll get in this with Danny. There were 3 perfect games last year, correct? Is that what our count was?
I think two.
You basically.
There's been a lot the last few years.
Well, and as I said this yesterday in the green room when this news came down in the newsroom, newswire.
2:30 in the morning.
At 2:30 in the morning, we're up here working, and not too long ago there were only 19 perfect games.
Right, there's 23 now, I believe.
Once every 5 years, and now we have at least 5 in the last 2.
You want to know what the coolest thing is, though? If you recall Dave Sims, we had him on our show.
Of course, the play-by-play man for the Seattle Mariners.
He has called 3. He called the Phil Humber from the White Sox perfect game.
Against his ball club.
He called the no-hitter with 6 pitches from his ball club.
And now Felix Hernandez, of course, member of the
perfect
Mariners.
Game.
Won a Cy Young not too long ago.
2010. He called the perfect game for that. So he's called 3, and it's only August 16th. Or not only, but it's August 16th. You never know. He could call a 4th. That might be a record for 2 perfect games in 1 year as an announcer. There's been 23 in history, and as an announcer, he's done 2. And he's a great guy. Great. I don't know if you.
2 probably is the record.
Oh yeah, and
2's got to be a record.
He's also does a show on Sirius XM with Coach K. So he's a really good guy, and we're actually going to give him a shout on Facebook later and say Mazel Tov or congrats. But let's call AJ Ari and see what's going on with him.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, we'll get that with Danny. I have my own theories about it. We both have the same theory of why these perfect games are coming, but we'll talk with the gentleman at CBS Sports and see what he thinks about it.
Hey, he's a great writer, too. He's written for a lot of places. But
hello?
Am I speaking with AJ?
Hey, how's it going, Ralph?
I'm doing good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back in the Holy Land.
Yeah, absolutely. We were telling our listeners you were in the States visiting some family and, of course, at the Las Vegas Summer League. So, it's been a while since we had you on. What was your overall experience there? I think it was your first time there, no?
Yeah, it was my first time there. It was an amazing experience getting a chance to meet up with a lot of people working on staffs, a lot of NBA assistant coaches, head coaches, and scouts, and just anyone else working, trying to be get their way in the business as a writer, as a scouter, as a coach. The Vegas Summer League is just an amazing networking opportunity.
Right, and I understand that you spoke with Joe Kotott, who had some words about our station.
Yeah, Joe actually is. He also writes for Sheridan Hoops, so Chris had us get together. And Joe's actually a great guy, and to any coaches in the second division in Israel listening, you got a player, Darian Pelham, swingman from San Diego State, that he's looking to send over here.
Interesting.
Wait, but what did he say about our station?
No, he said he's spoken with you guys, and yeah, it was definitely. He said good things.
Okay, great.
Okay, yeah, no, he's been fun. We had 2 NBA draft guys, him and Jason Blesnick, who runs, our NBA
DraftChat.com. No, but if Joe says some bad stuff about him, I really wouldn't do anything. I mean, I got to respect the man's freedom of speech. But I'm glad he said good stuff. That's good.
Yeah, and he's very well known. He does a lot of stuff. He helps out a lot of teams, from what I understand. He runs a really great group. But AJ, we kind of were talking about this before the show. You guys have lost a lot of talent. I'm speaking now of Maccabi Rishon LeZion, a team that made the Final Four last year. Bowman got drafted in the Korean League, which I was telling our listeners is a very kind of popular league, good money there. And Kitchen got a great gig to go play for Panathinaikos. So, before we get into this year's squad, can you tell us a little bit what it's like to see those guys? I don't want to say move on because I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but kind of establish themselves now in new places and start a new career.
Well, I feel like the goal for most coaches, obviously, if you love a player, you'd love to bring them back, but it's a great feeling to see guys that you work with every day move on to go to places where they can be successful and have a successful career. So, for Brandon, the Korean League is a perfect fit for him because it'll really give him a chance to be the main scorer on a team. First of all, there's much more money in the Korean League than there is in Israel. And it's a very up-and-down game. So fans that watched Brandon last year, he's a guy that he can jump out of the gym. So in a fast-paced league like that, he's going to dominate. So I feel like just to go for a place where you can go, make a lot of money, play in a high-level league, and really, just build up his confidence, I think that's a great opportunity for him. And, Kitchen, let's see, like Panathinaikos to play next to Diamantidis. If someone wants to become a long-term pro point guard, playing next to Diamantidis is the way to go, So it should be an excellent opportunity for him, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in the EuroLeague this year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Panathinaikos, one of the really elite teams in the world outside the NBA. So it's exciting to see. And overall, the league has lost a lot of talent. a Doobie Pick from Eurobasket wrote this article talking about how, I believe, out of the first and second team that Eurobasket announced, first team All-Israel League, I think 9 out of the 10 players have left for other destinations. So as a coach or a member of Rishon LeZion, do you see that as a positive thing? It's going to be an interesting year. Even Maccabi Tel Aviv is a completely new squad. There's so many new faces. Is this kind of a rebuilding year for the Super League, or do you think all these new guys that were brought in will be able to contribute just the way as the old guys did who departed?
Well, when I was in Vegas, I had an opportunity to meet a lot of other coaches throughout Europe, specifically in Italy and Germany. I tried their league to a lot of scouting in the Israeli league, and I actually think it's a positive in that leagues that are considered to be stronger than Israel, they give the respect to the coaches, that they watch our games, they see our players, and they look and they think guys, if they're successful in our league, can be successful in their league. If you look, Maurice in Italy, he took Dunstan and Adrian Rice. So you can see just that strong teams, strong leagues like Italy are putting a lot of value in our league, which I think is only a positive. And, listen, it's not just like this in the Israeli league. If you look all throughout Europe, if the guy goes to the Italian league and he succeeds, he goes to Spain. And if he goes to Italy and he doesn't succeed, and he'll move down to a lower league. It's just how it is in European basketball. And as an American, you'd like to be more happy, but I feel like this is more the reality of the situation, and you take that as a compliment that other teams put value into the work you put in all year.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's going to be a fun year for all the basketball fans here because there's going to be a lot of new faces, and the cool thing, and Ari's going to get to it in a second, the cool thing is to see when some of these guys stay in Israel, like the Marco Killingsworth and Ramel Bradley, and that's going to be Ari's next question, so take it away, Ari. Yeah,
now this is, of course, one of your competitors, but obviously you got to keep an eye on everyone because that's how the business is done, and sports world is no different than that. They had Marco Killingsworth. He was a star in Indiana. We've had him on the program, kind of a goofy guy, but a very nice guy.
Yeah.
He goes to Barak Netanya. Well, what are your thoughts? I obviously this is an upgrade, but how much of an upgrade, in your opinion, is it for Barak Netanya?
Well, we played against Marco last year in the playoffs, and we played against Ashton in the first round, which I don't know if you guys remember, went to 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it was absolutely a tough fight. Marco really the best
AJ, can I just jump in? Your line's going a little bit in and out. If you could just try to speak directly in the phone, we'll probably get a little clearer.
Okay, you hear me better now?
It's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a little better. Go on now.
Yeah, so I think Marco, he's established himself in the last few years as one of the elite post presences in our league. And I mean, besides for just him, they're bringing back, they have 3 Americans with good experience in the Israeli league between him, Ramel Bradley, and Raymar Morgan. Raymar, I don't know if you guys remember, he was with Rishon when we made it to the Final Four 2 years ago.
Right.
And, yeah, they're going to be a very, very strong team.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Of course, also Morgan was on Ashkelon last year and had that, I forget if it was a torn ACL, but some bad knee injury, had to go back. And it was when Ashkelon was, I think, in first place. And you mentioned that series. If our listeners recall, and AJ, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys were down 2-0 in that series, and you came back and won 3-2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That was pressure.
Right. And people, I remember watching the game and kind of the announcers when that, it's hard to come back from a 2-0 like that. And the announcers were saying, okay, this is very exciting for Ashkelon. I don't think they've ever been in a Final Four. They got a little ahead of themselves. And you guys pulled it off and moved on to the Final Four. But, yeah, I think Netanya with Ramel Bradley, who played for, Ashdod and Jerusalem last year. I kind of want to get your thoughts on these Israelis who kind of move from team to team. I think it's, I don't want to say funny. I love it. I mean, it's great to see them in different uniforms every year. But what about, these star guards, probably Israel's, legend guards of our generation, of our time, Roth and, of course, Tapiero going to Jerusalem, Roth going to Tel Aviv. Are you excited? Is this a good thing for the league that these guys are going to more, established clubs? They're on Cholon and Ashdod, respectively, who both had great seasons last year. But is this good for the league to have them now in the teams that are on TV the most, the teams that the media follows the most? Is this a good thing?
Well, first of all, I'd rather have Tapiero and Moran on the top teams because if you throw Tapiero on an average team in Israel, they're a Final Four contender.
Right.
And they actually knocked us off in the Final Four. But if you put Tapiero on Yerushalayim, they're going to be strong anyway. So I'd rather, I'm already going to have a headache preparing for Yerushalayim, so I'd rather have one less headache. But in terms of for the exposure of the league, I mean, Tapiero and Moran Roth are among the best guards we have in Israel. And I think just in terms of pride, them getting the chance to compete in European competition, I think is only good for our league.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Jerusalem. One of the fan favorites of our show, Courtney Fells, who was really great with us last year, came on, I think, twice or 3 times. Going to Jerusalem, staying in Israel. Him and Tapiero, and I think they're going to add a couple more guys because they really got rid of everyone last year. They got rid of their 5 Americans, I believe.
They just added Josh Duncan and Craig Smith, who are both. Craig Smith is a veteran in the NBA. I think,
right.
I've actually described him to people as the NBA's version of Uter before he came over. So I think he's going to be an excellent fit in both Israeli League and in the Euro Cup. And I mean, you've seen what Josh Duncan can do in our league as well. Yeah,
that's going to be a very interesting team. Those 4 guys coming in, of course. Pretty much, like as I mentioned, Bradley, Randall, Strawberry, all those guys are gone. It's going to be a completely new team. That's kind of an exciting thing about Israeli basketball. You look at the rosters this year across the league, and even from the top to the bottom. From Tel Aviv, it's a new roster. All the way to the bottom, it's a new roster. So that's very exciting. But we have a couple, about 2 minutes left. So, AJ, let's get to your team. You guys have added some guys. Let's first and talk about Paul Carter and what you think he will bring to your team. And he's replacing Brandon Bowman. We talked about Bobo earlier on our segment. But what do you think? He's coming from the D League. What is he going to bring to your team? And Cyprus, of course.
Well, aside from his shooting and his athleticism, I mean, I had a chance to meet Paul when I was out in Vegas, and he's just a really high character kid. I mean, he transferred from University of Minnesota to Chicago, Illinois, like the Chicago campus, which is a lesser team, but it's his sister was recovering from cancer. And I mean, that's a testament to his character that he puts his family and the people close to him ahead of himself. And this is a guy who he could be a much higher level player if he would have put his focus on his career before his family, but that's just not the kind of guy he is. And I feel like that's the type of character that you want to go to work with every day. So I'm very excited for Paul to come. And I'm also very excited for Willie Warren, who
Right.
was signed a week ago.
Right, and I mean, do you think, not putting you on the spot, but can this team have the same type of success as last year's team?
I mean, with Effie Bierenblum and Tom Irish coaching the team, we always have the opportunity to have success.
Right, yeah, very, very established coaches. And, last question before we let you go. Have you been following the Israel national team? Of course, they had their first real qualifying game yesterday in Eurobasket against Montenegro. Couldn't get the W, but do you follow that at all? Because, is that
I've been following. I watched the game, and the end of the fourth quarter was tough. I feel like a few guys' egos got in the way, and I feel like just the guards of Montenegro. I mean, one of the big debates is in the top level in EuroLeague and in the NBA, it's a big man's game that you can't win without bigs. But once you get to a league like the Israeli League or like the lower divisions of Europe, like the Euro Challenge or like the national team, the Eurobasket, like Israel's playing in now, European Championships, it's much more of a guards game. And as much as we have good Israeli guards, I feel like we lost focus in crunch time, and the Montenegro guards just took over.
Right, and I actually lied, AJ. I had one more question because I've been wanting to ask this as someone who's in the league. What do you got? What are your thoughts on the Eilat move? I mean, that's a long bus ride. I don't know if I know there's planes. I don't know if there's a budget for that in the Super League. But I mean, it's a great resort city. Everyone knows that. But is the league overall excited about having a team, 5, 6, 7 hours from most squads?
First of all, it's a ridiculous question because it's about the same distance between the Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's one of the spots of Brooklyn. It's their closest game. So
right.
If you're thinking about any league, the Russian league, the Spanish league, any league, traveling between Tel Aviv and Eilat is nothing. But for the long-term health of the league, I mean, how many teams can we have in the Americas, within the 25-mile radius? I feel like to spread the basketball around the country is good for the long-term health of the league, and I feel like with Oded Katash and with everything that they're bringing down there, I think they're going to be a really exciting team, especially Scotty Hopson. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Oh, yeah.
I can jump out of the gym. They're going to be a fun team, and I think Effie actually coached them a lot back in the day. They were an exciting team last time they were in Ligat Ha'al. I think it's amazing for the long-term health of the league, for the long-term health of Israeli basketball, to spread the basketball around the country. I think it's actually a shame there's no team in Beersheba. I think they should spread the basketball around.
Yeah, no, that's true. And yeah, Scotty Hopson was a superstar at Tennessee. A lot of fun to watch him in the SEC a couple of years ago. And Tel Aviv as well. Paul Tel Aviv, who has also another fan favorite of our show, Curtis Kelly, will be returning to them, just announced by Doobie Pick. So going to be very exciting year. AJ, would love to have you out, of course, throughout the season to help us break down what's going on, talk about your team. But until then, we've got to let you go. So have a good week.
Right.
Good to have you back, and be in touch.
Take care, guys.
Later, AJ.
Thanks, AJ. See you later.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was AJ Mitnick of Maccabi Rishon LeZion.
Right.
Talking about his team in the basketball league in general, and it's going to be pretty exciting. We got more of an inside look of the ball club. Thank you to AJ.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. It's going to be interesting to have a lot in the league this year. I understood his point, but still, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how players. I don't know. It's a long bus ride. It's going to be interesting to see how teams play there. It's a really long bus ride, especially, Ari. Think about the Galil to Eilat.
Did you talk about that they might take an airplane?
Yeah, I said I don't know if there's budget. There's there's flights from Tel Aviv to Eilat every day. I don't know. I mean, Maccabi Tel Aviv can do it if they want, but the other teams, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's not that much money, but some of these teams are very stingy about their money, and I don't know. Maybe if that's was the deal made when when they agreed. Maybe they said to have a to make this happen. The teams in that area, which
it could legitimately affect recruiting, because not all these big-time players might want to go on an 8-hour bus ride all the time. Because if you're from a lot, you got to travel out to all these cities.
But a great point that AJ made was, you look at the French league, the German league, and all these leagues, the Russian league. I don't think they fly. I mean, I've talked to Sean May, who played in the French, I don't remember, one of the leagues out there, and he was tweeting about an 8-hour bus ride. So I don't know. Maybe
Sean May was great with Carolina.
Right.
He won them the title. He was the Final Four MVP that year.
Yeah, 04 with the
05. 05 with Carolina, yeah.
It wasn't 04?
No, 04 was the team from UConn.
Okay.
That was
right.
Becca Okafor and Ben Gordon's team in 04. But
right.
05 was Sean May. And Sean May just couldn't be stopped. He was right on the post. I think he was 12 for 13 that game. And he originally, as you know, was supposed to go to Indiana.
Yeah, very, of course, because his father, Scott May, 1976 National Player of the Year and Indiana legend, didn't want him to play
because of the whole Bobby Knight thing.
Yeah, Bobby Knight was fired.
If you calculate the time, Sean May was a senior in 05, means he was a freshman in 02.
He went to my high school.
He was, oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's a high school grad of Bloomington High School North. But
Indiana went to the championship game in 02, and had they had a freshman Sean May, would have probably won against Maryland.
It was 01 because I wasn't in Indiana at the time. It was my first year in America.
No, 01 was Duke, Arizona.
But it was the 01-02 season. Yeah.
And so he 03, 04, 04, 05. Yes, he would have been a freshman.
Right. So.
And I think he would have been the difference. I don't know. It seemed like every team has a team of destiny. Like probably when you go to Michigan, 2000, you had the Flintstones, those guys from Flint, Michigan,
right,
who seemed destined to win the title. In 02, that Maryland title was Juan Dixon's year.
And Steve Blake.
And
Lonnie Baxter. They had a good team. Chris Wilcox, I believe.
I can't say for sure that Indiana would have won with a freshman Sean May, but their chances obviously would have increased.
Right, but they had Jared Jeffries, who now is still in the NBA. Sean May made it for a year or two with the Kings, and that was it. He couldn't make it. Because he always was a weird guy, because I think he's 6'9" and huge, but in the NBA...
He's like a tweener, as they call
very
it.
Undersized.
He's in between a forward and a center.
Because he's not athletic. He's LeBron. Let's put it this way: he's LeBron James' height, but he's like a lot bigger. So he can't. It's a very awkward position.
But he was just a beautiful fit in college.
In college, absolutely, and that team was a fun team. That championship game.
Marvin Williams was a freshman that year, and he came off the bench.
6th man of the year, yeah. Or I don't know if he was, but drafted number 2 the following that NBA draft. And that Illinois team in the championship game had D. Brown, who was actually a superstar, and Luther Head, who was in the NBA, and of course, a guard who R and I debate a lot about, Deron Williams. That was their big 3. They had 3 amazing guards, and then a couple guys down low. But it was really the guards. And since then, their coach has been fired. Bruce Weber is now going to be coaching for Kansas State as Frank Martin left for South Carolina. But good stuff with AJ, as always. And it's going to be a fun year. As there's going to be 11 teams this year. Oh, no, there was 11 teams last year. Excuse me. There's going to be 13 teams this year, I believe. I'm trying to figure out if Habika is still going to... Yeah. I think there's going to be 13 teams this year. Of course, the addition of Hapoel Tel Aviv, which will be awesome to see them compete because they were a great team last year, and they have a really amazing player in Curtis Kelly, a very amazing story. Unfortunately, his son passed away at age 1, and he had
Curtis talked about that on the show.
Talked about it on the show.
And that's how we found out about it.
Yeah, it was a very amazing story, and how he's able to, still... go day to day, continue, and very excited to see him in the league because you get more exposure in the first league than the second league, obviously. I mean, that's no question about that. And a great fan base. Hapoel Tel Aviv in soccer is probably the most respectable team in Israel with Haifa and Maccabi Tel Aviv. So they have a great fan base. And Hapoel Eilat, led by Oded Katash, who's one of the interesting story about him with playing and the NBA, and he was supposed to, all that. Of course, was going to play for the Knicks. Sorry, but
before the whole lockout.
Before the lockout, ruined that. Got it, tore his ACL or something horrible, devastating.
So he would have been the Omri Caspi.
Right, maybe though. Caspi was a start. He could have been the guy who was off the bench every 2 minutes. Caspi established himself in the league. I'm not saying he's a star, but he's a guy who started. I don't think he starts anymore. Maybe he does, but and then. A lot, led by Scotty Hobson, who was just a baller and really could hoop at Tennessee. With the SEC, used to get Florida a lot of fits and Kentucky a lot of fits. I think he averaged 17 points a game his senior year. And a lot's adding a lot of guys because they have to make a team from scratch. They have no team. So, Yeah, we can ask when we have some of these players on. We can straight up ask them, are you guys going to be flying to a lot? That's how we'll find out, I suppose.
If they know about it.
Yeah, well, no, once the season starts, they have to know. If they're flying there, they'll tell us, unless it's a secret. I don't know. But they're also are. Don't forget, they're constructing a huge new airport there.
In a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
In a lot. Not there. The other one was like north of a lot. This one's in a lot. It's supposed to be, from what I hear, it's a big runway. Before
Lot's a funky town.
Yeah, it's a very, speaking of a lot, 2 rockets were fired there late last night. If you heard about that.
Oh, I did not know that.
Grad rockets. But everyone's safe, thank God.
Sure.
Anyway, very exciting segment. It's always funny when we book these interviews and then it ends up just working out. Even if there wasn't these stories, we'd still be able to talk with Danny Knobler from CBS about, everything. But with these 2 sports, 2 different things going on, I think Ari will start off and ask him about this whole perfect game because he's, Ari and his history. And then I'll kind of examine this whole Melky Cabrera story because it's a very big story in baseball, leading the NL in hits. Second in batting average, coming off an all-star year last year of hitting 308 and 60-something home runs. Now 50 games out, 45 games left in the season. So I'll ask Danny what happens. Do you miss the postseason? If they make it, is it carry on to the next year?
Oh, that's a great question. I believe this has never happened before where someone got suspended 50 games with less than 50 to go. So this is an interesting case of what will happen.
Right, and Danny gave us 2 numbers, so if we can't reach him on the first one, we will get him on the second. But we have 30 minutes with him, which is going to be fun. And then Ari and I will talk for a little bit. And then we have it's a brief interview, 15 minutes, with Fred Claire, very exciting GM of the Dodgers. We'll tell you a little bit more information about him later. As very, very happy to have him on, though. The Dodgers, probably one of the biggest sports franchises in the world. So very excited to have him on. And of course, the Dodgers used to be the Brooklyn Dodgers, and we'll ask him about that. Also, it'll be interesting to ask him about actually, I don't know if we'll ask him about Magic Johnson buying the team, because I think he was supposed to buy the team with other investors, so we won't ask him about that. You might be sensitive about that. If everyone can hear that sound, it's no sound. But if you can hear that sound that doesn't exist, we're working right now on some new upgrades in the studio, so you might hear that, and just bear with us. It'll be fun in a couple of seconds. But yeah, so let's call Danny. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like that sound when you're running in the wind.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of like that.
But actually, I'm not going to call Danny until we get this story out. So, yeah, I guess we'll take a 1-minute commercial, then call Danny. Sorry, I need to get some water. This is Louis live on Israel Sports Radio, and up next, Danny Knobler from CBS Sports. We'll be back in about 1 minute, 2 minutes. We'll have a great segment with Danny.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
This is Tamar Cass, and you're listening to Israel Sports Radio.
Shalom from the United States. I'm Gina Pitts.
Parrish Graham.
Mike Pitts.
Roosevelt Hall.
Mike Roy.
We're your friends from the Pro Sports Lives radio show on WAFS Biz 1190 AM. You're listening to Louis Live.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Sports Strain CC, compression fit, UV protection, moisture wicking, anti-odor, and physique enhancing. Certified by the Circle K. Sports Strain is a revolutionary CC garment that features high performance properties and a compression fit, offering the wearer ultimate comfort and style for sports and everyday wear. Custom logos and team jerseys are available. For orders, please visit TamirGoodman.com. That's TamirGoodman.com. Back here on Louis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us here on Thursday, last day of the work week in Israel, for those of you who work. So we're going to dial up our next guest, Raphael, introduce him, and we'll talk to him. Be great stuff, as always. And would remind everyone to check out our store by clicking on. Well, there's no store.
No, there is no store, so you can't check out our store, but there will be.
Yeah, when it's back up.
Hi, am I speaking with Danny?
Yes.
Hi, Danny. You're on Louis live on Israel Sports Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
And we were just telling our listeners, we've had a lot of great guests from the baseball world, and usually when we have them on, we're not having them on after a huge day in really baseball history. And we didn't plan it for this, just for everyone out there. It just kind of worked out. But I'm going to introduce my co-host, Ari Louis, who's going to talk about last night's perfect game.
Yeah, Danny, welcome to the program. And a lot of things to discuss, but one of my theories or curiosities is to the fact that the perfect game used to be very, very rare. It's about once every 5 years or so, baseball history. We've had 3 this year. We had a couple last year. And honestly, I think it's because there's been less juicing. The hitters are not as good as they were when they were taking steroids. That's my only explanation. If you have another reason or theory, let us know. I want to get your thoughts. Why we're seeing all of a sudden a bunch of perfect games the last couple of years?
I think most of it is just random. Some of it is what you said, and just an overall decline in offense. Not drastic decline, but a decline based on pitchers being better and just the cyclical nature of baseball. That different positions become harder to find at different times, and right now hitters are harder to find than pitchers. But I don't think we should look at it as I'm not sure we should look too deeply into the reasons for it, because after all, if you're looking for eras of pitching, you would do a lot. You'd have a lot easier time looking at, say, the mid-1960s and 1968 when you had Bob Gibson with his 1.12 ERA and bringing a change in baseball where they lowered the mound.
Right.
And we didn't see tons of perfect games in that era when pitching was obviously more dominant. So I think it's probably more random than anything else, but I do think based along with that randomness, there are some things that make it somewhat more likely.
All right, and I want to go now to Felix Hernandez, King Felix. A couple years ago, he wins the Cy Young when he had a terrible one-loss record, but his strikeouts, innings pitched, ERA were so good, they had to give it to him. And I'm curious from his perspective because he's one of the best pitchers in the last couple of years, in my opinion at least, but he doesn't have run support. He's not on a good ball club. They just got rid of Ichiro, the kind of the face of the franchise. Is there a point where Felix is going to ask to get out of Seattle so he can have a chance to get some proper run support and make some more runs at future Cy Youngs?
I don't think he would ask out for that reason. Now, as of now, he's shown absolutely no indication that he wants out at all for any reason. But I think if he did at some point want out, I don't think it would be so much the run support or the lure of Cy Youngs. I think it would be more wanting to win. Felix is very young and got to the big leagues at a young age and has succeeded at a young age. At some point in many players' careers, if they are playing for teams that haven't won, they have a great desire to try to win and go to a team that has a better chance of winning. And sometimes even players who have won, then they want that even more. But I think if there comes a point where Felix wants out of Seattle, that would probably be why. Now, one thing to remember is he did sign his first long-term contract with the Mariners, but that only has a couple more years to go after this. At some point, the Mariners are going to have to find a way to extend Felix's contract, and now it may end up being that he wants out because they're not willing to pay him what he's worth. We'll have to see. I think, especially after what we saw yesterday, the pressure on the Mariners to pay him enough to keep him there can only go up, because you're talking. He was already as popular as could be, and to have a day like yesterday, that only increases that.
Right, and let's move on now to pretty much the second biggest story yesterday, and kind of a sad story for me. Melky Cabrera from the Giants having an MVP season, All-Star MVP. Last year had a breakout season. steroids. 50 games, there's 45 games left, or maybe it's 44 now. Very sad for Giants fans who had a lot of conference. There's a lot of buzz. We've had a lot of guests from the San Francisco area who've been really excited to see him develop after his time with the Yankees didn't go as well as a lot of people planned. But what does this mean to the Giants? This guy was really their bat. What do they do now? They're, I believe, in third place. How do they pick up from this kind of loss at the end of the season, towards the stretch? What do they do?
Well, there's a few possibilities. The one is that the players who were there pick things up, and that would, in large part, mean someone like Pablo Sandoval, who spent a lot of time on the DL this year, coming back, being healthy, and becoming the middle of the order bat that he has been when he's been at his best in the past, and that Melky Cabrera was for the Giants. The other possibility is that they go get somebody through a waiver trade. Now, that's not as easy to do, and it's certainly not easy to pick up a hitter who has a chance of having the same impact on them that Melky Cabrera had. Alfonso Soriano of the Cubs has cleared waivers, is able to be traded. The Cubs would certainly pick up a fair amount of his remaining contract. Two things that work against that. Number one being the Giants haven't really liked him very much in the past. Maybe they would change their mind because he's available now and they need help, but we'll see. It's a longer-term investment, even with the Cubs picking up money, because Soriano's contract goes on well beyond this year. And the other problem with that is Soriano has expressed, and expressed again yesterday, that he really would prefer not to play in San Francisco. He doesn't like it very much there and doesn't want to go. And as a 10-5 player, 10 years in the big leagues in the last 5 years or more with the same team, he has the right to block any trade. So he would have to say yes. The Giants would have to decide they want him. The teams would have to come to an agreement. A lot would have to happen for that. Whether there's somebody else they could get, it's really, really hard to say. The waiver process is difficult, and there were no real impact bats, or very few that anybody would even think of as potential impact bats, available on the trade market in July. It's hard to imagine that there would be more available now in August.
Right, and yeah, the Giants are, I want to correct myself, second place right now. I'm at third in the wild card. One game out, though, from the Dodgers. Let's talk about Melky Cabrera and kind of what this means for his career. He was, I read a great article by Jason Stark, who we've had on the show, a really great guest, but saying this is going to cost him millions and millions and millions of dollars. What does this mean for last year kind of had that breakout year, hitting over 300, a lot of hype, then going into this year and really lived up to that hype. What does this mean really for his extension, or are the Giants going to want to give him a contract? Are people going to think everything's been a fluke? I mean, there's so many questions here, so help us out.
The answer is a lot of people are going to think it's been a fluke. And the answer on the Giants is they're upset right now. If it came down to today trying to make a decision on it, I think the Giants' decision would be obvious. Get rid of him. We can't stand him. He's potentially ruined our season. Now, the other side of it, of course, is how much did the Giants benefit over the first 3.5 months of the season from whatever Melky's steroid-fueled stats were? And how much better are the Giants because Melky played well while he was cheating? So there's a lot of questions. Now, as to Melky's reputation, I don't think there's any question, especially for a guy like him who, as you said, just had a breakout year last year. Until he proves otherwise, the feeling is going to be he did this because he was taking drugs. So the value, his value on the free agent market drops considerably, and his reputation is basically at this point shot. Now, whether he can revive that later, maybe he can. But as of now, the view of him is going to be, well, we can't trust any of the numbers he had last year or this year because we know that he was cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. And, looking at his home runs here, we're looking at it here. 7 home runs, 8 home runs, 9 home runs, 13 home runs, 4 home runs, and then last year, 18 home runs. So, it's very sad, though, because, as I said, a lot of people have been very happy for him. Of course, the Yankees got rid of him, went to Atlanta, then went to Kansas City. and had the breakout year under Kansas City. And San Francisco always seems to be that team looking for that bat, at least for the last few years. The pitching is always going to be there no matter what, but the bat is not. So, yeah, we had a good question for you, Danny. If he's suspended for 15 games and they make the playoffs, does that carry into the playoffs or the next season? Yes.
It does. Wow.
Ooh.
Well, either way, if they make the playoffs, it carries into the playoffs. If they miss the playoffs, then it'll carry into next season.
Wow.
So
okay.
Now, the other question on that is, because it would carry into the playoffs, would the Giants even put him on their playoff roster with the possibility that he would have to miss a few games? And maybe they don't, and then I think at that point, I think the answer is it carries into next season. So it's a very difficult question there, but obviously the Giants first have to make the playoffs for that even to be relevant.
Right.
Yes. Sorry, did you?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say, I think Major League Baseball is going to have a tougher penalty because this is a guy that could have potentially made a lot of money. He could have been caught a couple years down the road, and then a team is potentially stuck with the guy who cheated. And, I mean, I'm kind of believe in a zero tolerance. I think if you're caught once, you're out of the game. I mean, I would want to go real hard. I want to get your thoughts. I know it's better than it has been with steroid usage, but are players not that scared of a 50-game suspension at this point?
I think most players are. I think the majority of players are very scared of that 50-game suspension. But obviously, and you're absolutely right, the situation with Melky was a little different. A guy who had not put himself in position for the big money contract before, had the opportunity with free agency approaching, and apparently we have no other way of looking at it other than that he decided it was worth the risk of getting caught and the risk of 50 games. So based on that, yeah, you're not the only ones. There are other people thinking that obviously the penalty isn't big enough to deter somebody who has the chance at that big money contract. And who knows? He could have gotten away with it, could have ended up with a contract, and then if it was all built on juice, then maybe the team that gets him, they got a bum deal. Well, that happened plenty of times in what we call the steroid era. We don't call this because of the testing now and the feeling that steroid use isn't as prevalent as it was before. We call the previous era the steroid era, but it happened all the time where teams had to make decisions. Are the numbers they're seeing, is the performance they're seeing real? And sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes a guy signed and they thought, well, you know what, he signed, he figured he got the deal, and then got off the juice and then wasn't the same player. So, yeah, there are those questions, and the bigger question that you asked is absolutely relevant. Is the punishment enough to deter somebody who has a chance to make big money as a free agent? And if it's not, what do you do? Now, of course, all the steroid penalties and any other penalties like that have to be negotiated with the players' union. And the question then becomes, are enough players offended by it? Say a player who is also going to be a free agent this year and said, hey, I almost got robbed out of my money because somebody was going to give it to Melky Cabrera based on him cheating. Are players upset enough about that to go to the union and say, you know what, it's time, we need even bigger penalties in 50 games because this isn't enough to deter a guy who has a chance at that big money.
All right, now I want to go out to Boston. Owner John Henry said regarding the meeting the players had with ownership that the players didn't call out Bobby Valentine. I kind of have a hard time believing that. I think if you're having a meeting and everyone knows it's about Bobby Valentine, I don't think the players spoke positively about him. The Red Sox are not in good shape. And last year, even with the whole chicken and beer situation, they were one game away from the postseason. Do you buy John Henry's statements that the players didn't call out Bobby Valentine?
Well, you know what? It's all semantics. You can say call out, you can say whatever. We've known since spring training that there were problems Bobby had in the clubhouse with the players. He's had problems with his coaching staff, and he's also had problems with the players. Now, if players were complaining in spring training and players were complaining in April, I think you can assume players were complaining in July too. how much they said in the meeting. We weren't in the meeting. I'm sure you can use whatever word you want. If one person thought it was calling out, another person might have called the same thing constructive criticism. It doesn't make any difference what you call it. The fact is, the players haven't been happy. And, we want to characterize it, but the bigger characterization is obvious. They have a problem there with Bobby. Now, how do they solve it? There's a few ways to solve it. I don't know how many of them are good, but you can get rid of players who aren't going to go along with it. You can have management stand strongly behind the manager and say, you know what? You got to adapt to him because he's going to be there. You can change the manager. There's many different ways to approach it. Right now, the Red Sox haven't really done any of those. They've kind of been wishy-washy on it and continued to be even through the reports about the meeting. They've said, oh, yeah, there was a meeting, but it wasn't that big a deal. Well, you have an issue there, so it is a big deal. Whether they called out the manager, whether they called for his firing, it really doesn't make that much difference in the end. It's interesting, but it doesn't make that much difference in the end. The fact is, there's a disconnect, and there's a problem right now with those players and that manager, and the Red Sox have to find a way to solve that one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think following the Red Sox a lot this year, I'm a huge Jays fan, and they've had so many problems with their injuries and all these guys not panning out to what they were supposed to be, Carl Crawford and his wrist and all that. I think obviously he's different than the past management, than Tito, but still, to fire him after this year when all these guys were injured, I don't know if fair is the right word because it's baseball, it's a business, but still, I think he's gained a lot more hate from the national media and from everyone. I think it's only been 3/4 of a season. I mean, would you really fire a guy after one season? I guess the answer is yes, but I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's move on now to one of the feel-good stories, or for me at least, I love this story. The Pirates, who are just really doing great right now. They're still have some work to do, but just a winning season. That's a great start for them. And how about AJ Burnett? Being a Jay fan, I'm happy for him. 14-4, very quiet 14-4 with the Pirates, and of course Andrew having a great year. Could you talk a little bit about why the Pirates might have their first winning season since the 90s?
Well, because they have a better team. Simple as that. Andrew McCutchen is a true star, having a great year. They made a very smart move, as it turned out, for A.J. Burnett in taking a chance on him. A lot of people thought that was the wrong move at the time. Well, it's proven to be not only the right move, but by far the right move. And he has done very well there, and the Pirates people will tell you not only has he pitched well, but he's been a good influence on pitchers like James McDonald and on the whole rest of the team. Absolutely no question that was one of the biggest moves of their season, because there was a real question about how their major league rotation would be. They had some good pitchers on the way up, but a ways away. They didn't have anybody to take over that staff, and they got A.J. Burnett, and he's done it. They have a guy who has been, for them, a true number one pitcher, and they have a true superstar in Andrew McCutchen. They don't have a very deep roster. They don't have a terribly deep pitching staff. As a result, they have had some ups and downs. And they're in a little bit of a down cycle now, enough of a down cycle that the Cardinals have caught them for the second wild card and for second place in the division, enough of a down cycle that they're now 7 games behind the Reds, and it looks like they're going to probably have a hard time catching the Reds by the end of the year. But they're also still 11 games over 500, and I think they have a very good chance to finish over 500. It's not a guarantee by any means. We've seen teams fall apart at the end, but it looks like they have a good shot at that. And by doing that, then set themselves up. They've had a nice year this year. They may make the playoffs. Even if they don't, they've set themselves up to at least be thought of as a team that we should respect, and that if they come calling for a free agent this winter, if they have the money to spend on him, people aren't going to say, well, I'm not going to go to Pittsburgh because they have no chance of winning, because they put themselves in a little bit better position. So it's been a very good year for a very encouraging year, even on the way that as the season has gone on, their attendance has gone up some. They've had people show up. They've turned on the city a little bit, and if they can just get another little boost and maybe make it into the playoffs, maybe they can turn on the city even more.
Right. I mean, we've seen without a doubt that the fan base there with the Steelers and the Penguins, they're good fans for a very small city in America, very loyal fans. Maybe not that loyal to the Pirates, but if they see the Pirates are starting to really, succeed and they don't start trading away all these guys, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's move on now to the wild card standings in the American League East. Danny, as of right now, it's 3 teams in the AL East making the playoffs, with the Orioles and the Rays the last 2 spots with the new wild card rule this year. Would this be good for baseball to have 3 teams in the AL East and not have, the Tigers or the Athletics or the Angels or so on? I mean, would this be – what are your thoughts on this?
A week ago it was 3 teams in the AL West.
Right.
Next week it could be 3 teams in the AL West. We're right. I don't think we can judge where that's going to be with 6 weeks to go, because you have the Tigers are half a game out, the A's and the Angels are 1.5 games out. This is going to go right down to the end. And however it turns out, whether it's 2 in the East, 2 in the West, none in the East, and 1 in the Central, or 1 in the Central and 1 in the East, I don't think that's going to make any difference in terms of what people think about it. What makes a difference is that because these are so close, now some of these teams could easily fall off, but it looks like right now there's 5 basic teams for 2 spots. When you take whoever doesn't win in the Central between the Tigers and the White Sox, and you have the Orioles and the Rays, and then you have the A's and the Angels, you've got 5 teams for 2 spots. Even if a team falls off and it's 4 teams or 3 teams for 2 spots, we have a real likelihood that this is going to go right to the end of the season. And if it's still 5 teams for 2 spots, it could be a really wild last week of the season. And that's baseball has to love that. Now, people have said, well, what happens if there's ties, 3-way ties, and you have to break it in the logistic nightmare? Yeah, it'd be a logistic nightmare, but how exciting would it be to watch? Let baseball worry about the logistics. Let the players worry about having to travel from place to place. You'd be able to sit at home and watch it. What a great thing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And just let's kind of talk about these teams. We have 5 minutes left, 3 minutes left. Orioles, Rays. How about the A's? We got the amazing opportunity to interview Louis Wolf, who really spoke about his admiration for Billy Beane. And a great story there. It's awesome to see the A's succeed, especially when they got rid of a lot of these guys who are succeeding across the league. They're a very weird team. We've talked about them a lot. Josh Reddick leading the team in everything and hitting .250. So Bartolo Colon, of course, who's been, already, you could say he was washed up a couple of years ago when he was on the Yankees. So great story in Oakland. I mean, can this carry on? Is this possible that they can make the playoffs as this really wacky, crazy team?
Sure, it's possible. I mean, when you're in the position they're in at this point in the season, of course it's possible to make that, or a game and a half out of the wild card. Yeah, that's possible. Now, as I said, there's 5 teams in there basically for 4 spots, or for 2 spots, so 3 of them aren't going to make it. So you have to, at this point, say they're probably less likely to make it they're more likely not to make it than to make it. However, they have a real chance, and Billy Beane and his staff deserve a lot of credit. They made some big moves last year. They traded away 3 significant pitchers. Gio Gonzalez, who's having a great year in Washington, Trevor Cahill, who went to Arizona, and Andrew Bailey, who then got hurt and is just now coming back with the Red Sox. But normally when you trade 3 major league pitchers, significant major league pitchers like that, you're not going to have a good year the next year. But 2 reasons why he did and why they are having a good year. One, they did an outstanding job in those trades. The pitchers that they got back from both Washington and Arizona have helped them. And Josh Reddick, who came from the Red Sox, has been one of the biggest offensive forces on the team. I would argue, I know Reddick's had a great year, I would argue that the most significant offensive addition and another gamble that they took was Yoenis Cespedes. Many teams that looked at Cespedes, a lot of teams thought Cespedes was a very talented guy who could at some point help them. However, most of the teams that liked him, maybe all the other teams that liked him, thought that it was going to take a while for him to adapt to American baseball and that he was going to have to start off in the minor leagues.
Right.
The A's not only gave him more money than anyone, but were willing to put him right away in the major leagues, and he proved that he belonged.
Yeah.
He has made an impact. He's the most important hitter on their team.
Yeah, you're right. Hitting .301. I didn't mention him earlier. I kind of was surprised to see that move, just the history with the A's with the money. But of course, they did get rid of a lot of guys in the offseason, a lot of pitching. But a really interesting team. Brandon Age is on the team. Coco Crisp is on the team. So Josh Reddick from the Red Sox, Johnny Gomes who played for Tampa. So you have all these journeyman guys who are kind of uniting to make this run, and it's been really impressive. Before we let you go, we have a lot of fans and listeners in LA, so let's talk about this Angels team. Mike Trout, Ari and I, my co-host, have had this debate. He thinks Cabrera's the MVP. I think Trout's the MVP. So what do you think?
I think it's that it's not been decided yet. If there's a way to go, I think that at the moment, if people had to decide, Trout would probably get it. But there's no guarantee that by the end of the year it'll be the same, because Cabrera, and don't forget Josh Hamilton too. He had another 2 home runs last night. They didn't win, but he had another 2 home runs last night, and he's at 100 RBIs too. Any of those three, I think at this point I'd probably be surprised if someone other than one of those three won it, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of those three won it, depending on how the rest of the season goes. Trout has been incredibly important to the Angels. But the Angels at the moment aren't in the playoffs. And that doesn't mean he can't win. They've certainly been in the race. And he's been a crucial factor. And if they brought him up earlier, if they had him start the year, maybe they would be in a playoff position right now. We'll never know. He's had a great, great impact. But players have had great impacts through the middle of August and then slumped by the end of the year, too. If he slumped, Miguel Cabrera could end up winning the Triple Crown. He's not that far off in any of the categories. So if Miguel Cabrera won the Triple Crown and Mike Trout slumped, I think you'd have your answer on who was the MVP. On the other hand, Mike Trout, if he continues doing what he's doing and driving in runs and scoring runs and running the bases and playing defense in center field, and the Angels run off and get into the playoffs, then I think you have your answer there, too. I don't think this is decided yet, but I think if you had to vote today, I think Trout would probably get it.
Which is amazing, considering his age, first year in the major leagues, and didn't play a full season.
Right.
Writers might be against that, might not, but he is certainly worthy of it, even though I like Cabrera more. But I certainly hear the argument for Mike Trout. Danny, we have to run. We certainly appreciate your time here on Louis Live on Israel Sports Radio, and we'd love to do it with you again in the future.
Sounds good. Good to be with you guys.
All right, Danny. Be
Thanks,
well out there.
Danny.
All right, that was CBS Sports Baseball senior writer Danny Knobler. Breaking Down did a great job, gave some in-depth detail about the playoffs, postseason potential MVP awards, as well as the perfect game situation and the suspension with Melky. So we appreciate Danny's time. We're going to take a break, and we'll have more on the other side.
Fred Clare.
Yes, Fred Clare will be on the other side. This is Louis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
This is Tamar Cass, and you're listening to Israel Sports Radio.
Shalom from the United States. I'm Gina Pitts.
Parrish Graham.
Mike Pitts.
Roosevelt Hall.
Mike Roy.
We're your friends from the Pro Sports Lives radio show on WAFS Biz 1190 AM. You're listening to Louis Live.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Sports Strain CC, compression fit, UV protection, moisture wicking, anti-odor, and physique enhancing. Certified by the Circle K. Sports Strain is a revolutionary CC garment that features high performance properties and a compression fit. offering the wearer ultimate comfort and style for sports and everyday wear. Custom logos and team jerseys are available. For orders, please visit TamirGoodman.com. That's TamirGoodman.com.
Broadcasting live from Jerusalem, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Support Barak Netanya Israeli professional basketball team as they give back to the children of Netanya through Netanya Hoops for Kids. Netanya Hoops for Kids serves all of the children of Netanya, especially the ones that need us most. Through basketball clinics held by professional players, at-risk children learn life skills like teamwork, communication, discipline, and community responsibility from real-life heroes. Netanya Hoops for Kids partners with the municipality, schools, and local nonprofits to bring thousands of children to basketball games each season. Join us as a donor, partner, or fan. One city, one team, one family. www.netanyahoopsforkids.org.
The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJing parties throughout Israel, birthday parties, weddings, club events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and much more. You pick the type of music and DJ Venom will turn your event into the party of the year. Available Sunday through Thursday. Call 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. That's 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. Book your party today. That's DJ Venom.
This is Dimitri Salita, and you're listening to IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Louis Live on Israel Sports Radio. And we're going to take a break. We'll have Fred Claire on the other side. This is Louis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
This is Tamar Cass, and you're listening to Israel Sports Radio.
Shalom from the United States. I'm Gina Pitts.
Parrish Graham.
Mike Pitts.
Roosevelt Hall.
Mike Roy.
We're your friends from the Pro Sports Lives radio show on WAFS Biz 1190 AM. You're listening to Louis Live.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Sports Strain CC, compression fit, UV protection, moisture wicking, anti-odor, and physique enhancing. Certified by the Circle K. Sports Strain is a revolutionary CC garment that features high performance properties and a compression fit, offering the wearer ultimate comfort and style for sports and everyday wear. Custom logos and team jerseys are available. For orders, please visit TamirGoodman.com. That's TamirGoodman.com.
Broadcasting live from Jerusalem, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Support Barak Netanya Israeli professional basketball team as they give back to the children of Netanya through Netanya Hoops for Kids. Netanya Hoops for Kids serves all of the children of Netanya, especially the ones that need us most. Through basketball clinics held by professional players, at-risk children learn life skills like teamwork, communication, discipline, and community responsibility from real-life heroes. Netanya Hoops for Kids partners with the municipality, schools, and local nonprofits to bring thousands of children to basketball games each season. Join us as a donor, partner, or fan. One city, one team, one family. www.netanyahoopsforkids.org.
The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJing parties throughout Israel, birthday parties, weddings, club events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and much more. You pick the type of music and DJ Venom will turn your event into the party of the year. Available Sunday through Thursday. Call 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. That's 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. Book your party today. That's DJ Venom.
Dimitri Salita, and you're listening to IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, back here on Louis Live. A really good 49 minutes left on our show. Ari Louis and Raphael Giller in the house. Start off the show with a great guest, AJ Mitnick, to talk about all the great stuff going on in Israeli basketball. It's going to be a very fun year. New faces all across the league. Maccabi Tel Aviv, Haifa. Haifa has, I think, added 7 players, Ari Louis. 7.
Well, they lost, of course, Sylvan Landesberg, probably their best player.
Oh, yeah, definitely their best player.
And they had a good team player-wise last year, even though they had that drought where they went about 2 months without winning a game.
Yeah, it's a lot of time.
We had a bunch of the players on the program last year. And
I think in the middle of that funk.
Yeah, in the middle of that funk, I kind of made fun of it. Someone was a little upset. But, you know, a point here, a point there. These games are very competitive. So, in fact, we went to a game, me and OCG, where they were up by 3 points with 30 seconds left but lost the game. They gave it 2 baskets, and then they had a bunch of chances right at the end but missed them and lost the game.
Right, a very talented team. Of course, Brad Greenberg is taking the helm this year. So that's going to be a very big deal for them. Former GM of an NBA team, the 76ers, former NBA assistant, former NCAA head coach at Radford, it goes on. Coach at Venezuela national team, assistant coach. So, yeah, very, very exciting there. But in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to dial up Fred Claire, who's a former GM of the LA Dodgers and won a World Series with them. One of maybe the most memorable World Series ever. Right, Ari?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite moments. Kirk Gibson's home run in the bottom of the ninth, the game 1 off Dennis Eckersley, who was a Hall of Fame player.
Closer, right.
And the story just goes on and on. Gibson could barely walk.
Right.
And he was not – that was his only at-bat in the entire World Series. He was so injured. But he was the MVP that season for the regular season in the National League. He was the heart and soul of the Dodgers. In fact, they gave him that award over Darryl Strawberry, even though Gibson only had 25 home runs to Darryl's 39. But because Gibson was such an emotional part of the ball club, the writers felt he deserved the MVP. Even though the Dodgers in 88, just like the Mets, both won their divisions. So you could have given it to Darryl Strawberry very easily that season. They played in the NLCS 7-game series, and basically Oral Hershiser was great. He was the NLCS MVP.
Right.
He was awesome, and he was the World Series MVP as well. He won Game 2 and Game 5.
Right, and Oral Hershiser now with ESPN. Maybe we'll try and get him on the line. But big news in U.S. soccer. We'll talk about it maybe with Tommy if we have time. We're going to preview with Tommy Smith from ESPN the Premier League, which starts this Sunday. But big news in soccer, Ari. U.S. beats Mexico in Mexico for the first time in 75 years. It's one of the craziest stadiums in the world. It's a nuts stadium. So that's a really big deal for the United States of America to do that. Scored the goal in the 80th minute, which is even more impressive. And wow, I don't know. It's really exciting. I'm proud. It's very, very big deal for American soccer. It really is, and it's great to see that even it could be accomplished without all the top guys in the league. You know, a lot of them are playing in Europe already right now, getting ready for the season. So this team won without a lot of their top talent. So very mazel tov to them, to the U.S. national team. That being said, we're going to dial up Fred Claire. Ari's going to take over probably most of this interview because this is more of his style. But, yeah, we're going to dial up Fred Claire right now. And very excited to have him on. As I mentioned, he was executive with the Dodgers from 1969 to 1998. That's a long time. So I might crack a couple jokes to him about the Brooklyn Dodgers because I know a lot about them. But Ari's going to talk to him about his success in acquiring Kirk Gibson. Ari, he's the one who acquired him.
Right. This was his idea. Gibson, of course, was basically probably the main reason the Tigers won the World Series in '84. He had a couple of clutch. He had a clutch home run with the Tigers. And that was that great World Series. Well, it was a sweep, but great for Detroit against Padres. Hi, am I speaking with Fred, Mr. Clare?
Yes.
Hi, this is Ari Louis. You're live on Louis Live on Israel Sports Radio. How you doing out there?
Very good, thank you.
Actually, this is a huge honor to have you on. Of course, a former general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and so many questions to ask you. And first, I want to go to that '88 World Series. The Kirk Gibson home run was one of my favorite moments in all sports, and it was you're the one who brought Kirk Gibson over, such an emotional leader for the Dodgers, and he had great playoff hits with the Tigers. Tell us your thoughts. Game 1, bottom of the ninth, when Gibson could barely get to the plate and hits that dramatic 2-run home run off Dennis Eckersley to win Game 1 and emotionally destroy the Oakland Athletics.
Well, Kirk was clearly the man for the moment, and it really was somewhat symbolic of all that he meant to our team in 1988. I had signed Kirk as a free agent, as I recall, in January of 1988. I knew the incredible talent that he had and his passion and drive to succeed. And so he had been so instrumental in all of our success during the season. He was certainly a leader of the team in so many ways, and fit in well with the other players that we had, people like Mike Scioscia, who's now gone on to a great career as a manager. But that was certainly a memorable moment, one of the most memorable moments in all of baseball history, and certainly the Dodgers' history. So it was great for all the Dodger fans and great for the Dodger organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love watching. I still get goosebumps and butterflies and watch that moment and hear Vince Scully's great call. And we'll get back more to the players on the field. But I got to ask you, as a broadcaster, Vince Scully, one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest baseball play-by-play man. What was it like to be part of an organization, even though you're not working with Vince Scully so much because you're making moves regarding players coming to the team, but what was it like to be part of an organization that Vince Scully as a member of it?
Well, the answer to that is that for all of us fortunate to be there through the years, in our years or my years with the Dodgers, my description of knowing Vinny very well and having a friendship with him would be that it was an absolute honor. It's an honor to be able to call Vince Scully a friend. People ask me often, what is Vinny really like? Is he as good as he seems to be in every way? And I say he's better than that, because as great as Vinny is as an announcer, and he's certainly, in my view, the best of all time. He's even greater as a person and human being, the way that he cares about people, the way that he handles himself. He's a total professional. He's always prepared. He has a passion for the game of baseball that came from his time as a child in New York, and growing up, of all things, as a Giant fan, as he has said. But he's got a great love for the game, a great dedication for the game. So he's tremendous. He's the very best.
Yeah, it was just great to listen to him. Even growing up in Arizona, there was a station down in Tucson that would play Dodger games, so I got to enjoy Vince Scully's voice, and it was like listening to music. It was really fantastic. I want to go back to that World Series of '88 because what people tend to forget, Kirk Gibson, as dramatic and memorable as a home run that he hit, that was his only at-bat in that World Series. And Orel Hershiser was the real star. He was the MVP of the World Series, 2 wins. And Orel was also your NLCS MVP of '88. So if you could, Orel, that was the best year of his career, really dominated the postseason. And I want you to, if you could, please talk to us about his contribution, what he was like off the field, his work ethic and preparation for the game.
Well, there isn't anyone who prepared any better in any more of a diligent and educated fashion than Orel. He gave a lot of thought to what he was going to do, to his game plan for any given game. he had the great combination of being intelligent and really applying even statistical analysis before it was even a popular phrase to his pitching ability. And so all of that came together in 1988 in such a remarkable way for Orel to establish the record for consecutive scoreless innings, to be able to do that and break the record of the great Don Drysdale, and have Don with us, with the Dodgers at that time, as an announcer, and to be there in San Diego when that happened was truly historic and truly a great moment. But Orel just had such great command, such great confidence, and was such a great competitor. And all of that came together. And, you know, you have to think back and realize that the 2 years preceding 1988, the Dodgers finished 16 games under 500 in both 1986 and 1987. It was really one of the most remarkable turnarounds in the history of the game, and Orel was certainly a driving part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make some great points that before the Dodgers won the World Series, a few seasons before that, not at such a good place. And even when they got to the World Series after winning the National League pennant, they were not picked by most to be competitive in that World Series or certainly to win it. And I'm curious of the Dodger faithful, because L.A. teams or fans of L.A. teams have a rep that they show up in the third quarter or they leave in the third quarter, they leave in the seventh inning. In fact, there's that famous scene when Kurt hit that home run that you see the people driving away and the brake lights come on. They realize they missed something. People have talked about missing that ninth inning. But from the L.A. faithful perspective, what were their thoughts about the Dodgers' realistic chances of pulling that off, winning that World Series against the A's, and doing it in 5 games, not even a 7-game World Series?
Well, I think as the season progressed in 1988, and we had added a number of new players to our lineup, there was a trade that I made during the winter meetings that brought us Alfredo Griffin, who was desperately needed to fill the shortstop and leadership position on the field, and Jay Howe, who we added as the closer, and Jesse Orozco, who came to the Mets in a 3-way deal that became our left-handed relief specialist. So I think as that team evolved during that season, despite the fact of having had 2 really down seasons in 86 and 87, the fans began to believe in what they were seeing, and just the components of the team came together because we had players coming off the bench who were making contributions. Mickey Hatcher, who was really the first player that I signed when I became the general manager, had been released by the Twins, became a contributor and added so much to our team in terms of his spirit and his joy for the game. So the fans began to see that we had an opportunity to do something very special. But, of course, the one team that caused us great trouble throughout the season was the New York Mets. I think we only won 1 game from the Mets during the course of the season series in 1988. And yet, when we beat the Mets to advance into the World Series, then there was the realization, I think, that anything was possible. And Kirk's home run in the first game really set the tone, and of course we were to go on to win in 5 games.
Yeah, again, truly a tremendous accomplishment. Everything that went around that they beat the A's, who had great players like Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco, Dave Stewart, is truly remarkable. I want to go now to the early 90s, kind of a sad point for the Dodgers in 91. They had that big 9.5 game lead at the All-Star break. The Braves come and march down in the second half, take the lead. And what I always notice about that in 91, the last game of the season, your Dodgers are playing the Giants. The Giants had nothing to play for, but they beat the Dodgers and almost celebrated like it was a World Series because there was such hatred between the ball clubs. They were able to knock you guys out in 91. 93, you returned the favor and knock out the Giants, even though the Dodgers had nothing to play for. And again, the Braves get the benefit of both times. But what was that like, the rivalry that was so intense that winning a game that knocked the other team out of going to the postseason was like celebrating winning a World Series?
Well, it's what the Giant or Dodger-Giant rivalry is all about, and you mentioned two very interesting seasons that most people don't focus on. But 91 was a tremendous disappointment because we did have a great lead over the Braves. I thought we were going to go on to win that year, and it was very, very frustrating to let that slip away from our grasp because before we went to San Francisco, I don't have all of this in front of me, but just by memory, we had lost a very, very tough game in our last game of the homestand before we went up to San Francisco. So those were really vital games for us. So that was devastating, really, to lose when we looked like we were on the path and had a very solid team. And of course, in '93, when we beat the Giants to knock the Giants out of it, I remember that very well. We had some of our young players, Raul Mondesky, that made big contributions in that game, and I know that was a devastating loss for the Giants. But again, typical of the Giant-Dodger battles through the years.
Hi, Fred. You're on right now with Raphael. We have about two or 3 minutes left. I want to thank you for coming on, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your career. Before you were GM, you were Vice President of Public Relations. While you were the VP of Public Relations, did you ever think that you might get promoted to the GM position? Was that ever something that crossed your mind? Because that's very rare.
Good question. I was very fortunate with the Dodgers, starting my career in 1969, and I was given a lot of responsibility kind of every step along the way because in 1969, the Dodger organization was much different, much smaller. I had the opportunity to be very closely involved with Walter Alston and his staff, and from a standpoint of handling statistics and being close to the team, and Walter is the manager who became a dear friend, his coaches. And so then the evolution in my career before becoming the general manager, I was the executive vice president, so I had attended many general manager meetings with Al Campanis and become very much involved in dealing with agents as the executive vice president and dealing with all phases, really, in overseeing the baseball operations. So when I became the general manager, it wasn't as if I went from a starting point to, boom, you're the general manager. I had nearly 20 years of experience in baseball and with the Dodgers. So when I was asked to become the general manager in April of 1987, it didn't seem like a major leap for me. I knew the game, I knew the people in the game, I knew our organization, and I knew or felt that I knew what had to be done. So I accepted the challenge and enjoyed it every day that I had that responsibility.
Wow. I wanted to ask, were you a fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers? Because you grew up in the time when they were very successful until they left, of course, and I believe it was 57. Did you follow those teams with Koufax and Gil Hodges and Duke Snider and Campanella? Was that, I mean, before they moved to L.A., were you interested at all in the Brooklyn Dodgers?
That's a good question. Actually, growing up in a small town in Ohio, I was very much of a Cincinnati Reds fan. So my brother was a Cardinal fan. So when the Cardinals would come into Crosley Field to play the Reds, my brother had a team that had Stan Musial and Nino Slaughter and Marty Maring, great Cardinal players. I followed the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds, of course, weren't as good, but I had my own favorite players on that team. Ewell Blackwell was a great pitcher. I could go on and probably name every player on the game. So I was more of a Cincinnati fan, very frankly, than a Brooklyn fan. But one of the great honors of my life is enjoying the Dodgers. I was able to develop friendships with people like Roy Campanella, and having the honor to know Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese. And today I stay in touch with people like Carl Erskine and Ralph Branca and George Shuba. So I was fortunate to know what that group of players were all about as people. I mean, through getting to know them, through old-timers games, and that was just a great, great collection. People talk about, the great Dodger teams of the 50s, but when you had the opportunity to know the people, to know Duke Snider, to know Pee Wee, to know Jackie, to know Roy Campanella, those were individuals with tremendous character in addition to their baseball ability.
Yeah, amazing teams. I grew up with that. My father lived in Brooklyn and played cats with Sandy Koufax, so I always grew up. That last question before we let you go, Mr. Clare, what have you been doing lately? I know you have a consulting group. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about what you've been involved with in the last few years?
I do some consulting work. I'm also very much involved from a civic standpoint. I'm on the board of directors of the Rose Bowl because I live in Pasadena. We have a major renovation of the Rose Bowl. I'm active in the Special Olympics. I've also wanted to give back to the game in terms of assisting students. So I have taught at USC, and I'm on the advisory board of the Long Beach State Sports Management program. And then I have had an active role in statistical analytical work with a gentleman by the name of Ari Kaplan, and we have worked with several major league clubs. Ari is now with the Chicago Cubs, so I've been interested in that area and just stayed very active in the game of baseball through consulting work and just through the friendship that I have with the game.
All right. Well, Mr. Clare, this has truly been an honor. We really appreciate your time. We know you're very busy. This is just great. Thank you so much for being on Louis Live and Israel Sports Radio, and continued success and continued good luck with your work right now.
Thank you very much. Take good care.
Thank you. All right.
I can't believe we just talked to the former general manager of the Dodgers. That was great.
We have to move on, though. We can't talk about that. We have to move on.
Yes. We have to keep going. And what I just want to say is that Mr. Clare was great, and I love reminiscing about the World Series because it's one of my favorite moments in all of sports. And yes, indeedy.
Yeah, we can hear you a lot better now, and we're on right now with ESPN's Tommy Smith. And Tommy, I know we usually don't talk about American soccer with you, but we got to talk. We got to start off the show with USA's huge win in Mexico last night. Could you talk about America hasn't been able to win there in 75 years. Was this a really big deal for American soccer moving ahead?
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal. Every team knows that you've got to have a certain amount of luck to win a game, and I think the U.S. realized that they had a lot of luck on this one. Tim Howard came up huge, and they got a goal basically against the run of play, but you take victories however you get them. When you play in the Azteca Stadium, it takes the breath of you, and a lot of people were concerned that the U.S. wouldn't finish as strongly as they did, but they did. It didn't sap their energy at all, and I think Klinsmann made a couple of very good substitutes, which made a difference in the way the game went. And if you've never beaten a team in 25 outings, 24 wins for Mexico and 1 draw, and now it's changed just a little bit, 24 wins, 1 draw, and 1 victory for the U.S. So in 75 years, hey, it's a good result to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, the USA also beat Italy in a friendly this past year. So making a lot of improvements there despite maybe not having the best record under Klinsmann. But, Tommy, it's a great time for us. European soccer is back, and the Premier League is starting. It really already started. But we've had a lot of great guests from England on. We're happy now to have you on. Let's talk about some of these teams. I want to start off and ask you, Chelsea spent a lot of money getting some of these young guys. It was great to watch Oscar with Brazil in the Olympic tournament. But do you think that Chelsea can contend with City and United this year?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, it's one thing to play under 23 and play well and look good, but it's another thing to come into the Premier League and play good. I mean, I don't put a whole lot of stock in the Olympics, whilst the Olympics were very good and very entertaining. I mean, I've always said it, inconsistency is what rules at that age. And, if Brazil can't win a gold medal with the team that they had, well, then I guess they'll never win a gold medal. But getting back to the Premier League,
right.
I don't think there's Chelsea can contend.
No, actually, you brought it up, Tommy. I was been saying this for the last week, or at least since the game was. I still not really understand how Brazil, who has like 8 world-class players who play anywhere from PSG to Chelsea to Hulk going. I mean, how does a team like that? How are they not able to beat a team that's largely plays their club soccer in Mexico? Do you have an answer that even makes sense?
Well, the answer that makes sense is that young players sometimes get caught up in the hype of what's going on. I mean, okay, you have 3 overage players on the team, but 3 overage players on a team of young kids, basically, I don't care where they play, when they're that age, they get caught up in the hype of what's going on. And Brazil probably figured all they had to do was go out in the field and win this one, But if you looked at the Olympics and you looked at the way the team were playing, you knew there was a problem. I mean, Brazil had a problem at the back. I mean, I have been more than critical of the 2 full-backs that Brazil had. I mean, I know one of them plays with Manchester United and the other one plays with Real Madrid. But the criticisms came home to roost. I mean, the first goal, which is so important in any kind of a final, but is definitely really important in an Olympic final because it settles the nerves. And, Brazil had a number of brilliant individuals that didn't have a brilliant team. Mexico didn't have so many great individuals, but they had a very good team effort. And at the end of the day, and I keep saying this, I've said it over and over and over until people are bored of me saying it, at the end of the day, football is a team game. You may have some great players who will carry you to a victory here, carry you to a victory there. But over the long haul, if you don't have the team, you won't win anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And great to see the Mexico team play together, and a really fun team. You could tell they all really wanted it more than Brazil. I mean, Brazil was saying they wanted to win it, in honor of going into the World Cup. But they sent in a world-class team. They weren't able to do it. But back to the Premier League, because that's what we're talking about right now. There's some games on Sunday. We talked about Chelsea. Man City, what's been going on with some Dzeko rumors? Is he staying or is he leaving? It seems to me that what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I have a feeling that he's going to leave. I mean, I know time is starting to run out, and Mancini runs the ship his own way. I don't particularly like the way he runs the ship. He seems to manage a lot of it through the media rather than through the dressing room. I mean, I haven't really seen any updates on where Dzeko is going to go or what he's going to do, but it makes an awful lot of sense. I mean, I think that Tevez, I'm touting Tevez. I think he might be the leading goal scorer in the Premier League this year if he stays grounded and stays the way he is. I don't think I've ever seen him look as fit as he did in the Charity Shield, and he could be the big stuff. He could be the big man for City this year.
Yeah, I mean, last year there was those feuds. He was gone, went back to Argentina for 5 months, it was, or something like that. This team, a lot of success, of course, last year. Balotelli, we really saw him grow in the Euro, really leading that team, which was fun. He's a crazy guy, obviously. But let's look now on the other side of Manchester. Sir Alex, of course, has been doing a lot of interesting things. He stayed in Manchester when the team went to Hamburg so that he could try and figure out this whole Van Persie thing. I mean, we've heard so many things even when we had you on last time, which I think was in probably late June or early July, we were talking about this Van Persie thing. Is this going to finally when is this going to end?
Well, it's ended now, the fact that he signed them. I mean, there is no more questions. The question now is, what is he going to do with him? I mean, where is he going to play? I mean, I don't know why, but I just had that gut feeling, and I told you back then that Van Persie would go to Manchester United.
Right.
I took a lot of flack in the media that I was crazy and nuts. I knew nothing about football. But this morning, I was looking fairly good when you consider that he is now wearing a Manchester United jersey. And I know people are saying, he spent 8 years at Arsenal, he's not loyal to Arsenal, blah, 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 blah. It's gone on and on and on. Look, that's the nature of football. Players move from team to team. I happen to think that Manchester United, by current standards, I'm not saying I agree with it, but by current standards, they got a bargain. If Modric is worth £40 million, well, then Van Persie certainly is worth £24 million.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually about to go there because, as we've talked about, every time you come on, Israel's really the land of the Spurs. Most fans in Israel follow the Spurs. It's an interesting team, new manager. kind of interesting to see Gareth Bale signing with them after everything that happened with Harry, but he did, and that kind of led the way for a lot of the guys staying and having this team be hopefully competitive next year. What are you expecting from them, and what do you expect from this whole Modric saga as well?
Yeah, I think that AVB is off to a bad start in terms of the way he's managed this. I mean, he's done what Mancini has done. He's played it out in the media as well, and there's been a lot of very deep, wounding statements made that I don't think that they can be. I don't think that you can put a Band-Aid over them and say, okay, Modric is going to play with Spurs this year again. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now they have really got themselves in a rock and a hard place. I mean, Modric is not even training with the team, and Mancini is forcing him to train on his own because he figures that he's going to leave. He has to leave now. I mean, Modric is just so discontented now, and Levy, the man who runs Spurs, is saying he's not going until he gets £40 million.
Right.
I mean, it's already become like the Tevez saga of last year. I mean, he has become Tevez of this year.
Right. That's a good point. I think Levy might be demanding too much money, and then they might end up having to let him go for less. I don't know if what they're doing is going to work. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. We're going all around the league right now with ESPN's Tommy Smith examining the upcoming EPL season. So let's move on to a Liverpool team. Another new manager coming from Swansea. Impressive season with Swansea. Brendan Rodgers has made a lot of interesting comments, Tommy, in the media about all the hate towards Suarez is going to make him a stronger player, going to make him a better player. Then he came out and said the media didn't like him and wasn't happy about the move. So what's going to happen this year? And, of course, also I didn't even mention the whole Andy Carroll saga, which appears there's no way he's going to be there. So kind of break that down for us and help us figure out Liverpool's future and kind of the mess they're in right now.
Yeah, it is quite a mess. I think it's quite a mess. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers has not, he's been all over the shop. I mean, he said this about Suarez, that he'd be stronger and everything else, and then he's blaming the media for having a go at him. Hey, if the attitude is that he's going to be stronger on account of it, then leave the media alone. I mean, you're going to make a stronger player out of it. You're cutting your nose off to spite your face, as far as I'm concerned. And all the questions and question marks about how good Andy Carroll is, whether he can play with this team or not. I mean, it's one thing to have a team like Swansea and have them play well, because the expectations are not there. Swansea go out and they get a draw against the Manchester United or City or whatever, and that's considered a fantastic result by the Swansea fans. Hey, Liverpool go out and they play these guys. Liverpool fans don't want to know about drawing with them. Liverpool fans want to know, how are you going to beat them? So Rodgers has done a lot of talking. Come Saturday, the football is going to start being the main source of his being looked at by the Liverpool fans. And this thing about going to play ticky-tacky football or whatever he's going to play, and this guy doesn't fit in with it. But I always thought that as a manager, that was your job, to get guys to fit in. Mm-hmm. I thought it was your job to put the jigsaw together. I mean, if there's a piece missing out of the jigsaw, you got to go find it. Maybe it fell under the bed, I don't know, but you got to go find it. And that's what Brendan Rodgers has to do now. I happen to think that Liverpool might have a decent year because of the way things are going at Arsenal.
Right, and not to mention what they spent £35 million on him from Newcastle, and they're not going to get a fraction of that for whatever they decide to do with him. But we've talked about Suarez a little bit, or I did. The
question I have is, the guy that bad of a player? I watched them play with England yesterday against Italy in that game. I didn't think that he was such a bad player. Right. I'll tell you one thing. I've seen a lot of players with Liverpool playing a lot worse last year than I've seen Carroll play. I thought he played very well against Sweden. He scored a brilliant goal in the Euros. Maybe it is just time to give the guy a shot. Maybe it is time to give him a shot and see what he can do.
Absolutely. That goal against Sweden was one of the nicest headers I've really ever seen. It was from very far out. And I also watched part of the game last night. He is a good player, and you made a great point. Actually, you're the first person to say that, Tommy. That if he's it's your job as a manager, as a coach, to figure out. He's their star player. They spent all this money on him, so they're just going to let him go because he doesn't fit into his system. That sounds, now that you said it that way, I'm thinking about it, that makes perfect sense. And not to mention, they're going to lose so much money because he's not going to get he's not going to get at all, a fraction of what they paid for him. It's still a little bit ridiculous that they paid that much for him. But back to the Spurs, I want to talk a little bit more about them. We have to. Louis Saha is now left, I think, on a loan deal, where he is left to go to Sunderland. He's a guy who I don't know. He's had some ups and downs, but what do you think of him leaving the Spurs?
Yeah, well, again, it just seems to me that so much of this football game nowadays has become a conflict between manager and players. And it seems like if you don't like the manager, well, you just go someplace else. And if the manager doesn't like you, he tells you, okay, you're not going to play football, you're going. I mean, again, it's gotten back to this, what we were just talking about. I mean, as a manager, there are certain things you have to suck up and you have to get on with, because if you have a player, you got to figure out how to get the best out of him. And I just don't think that AVB is off to a good start. I mean, Saha, to me, was a pretty decent player. He's a man who can score his goals, and players like this, you start letting them leak away from the club, you eventually then find other guys who want to go with him, and it's to me, it's a bad precedent to set. Also, moving on now, just across the league, Newcastle had a pretty good, actually not a pretty good season, a very good season last year. Cisse from Newcastle, not from QPR, not to mix them up, Senegalese, not French, had an amazing end towards the season. I think 14 appearances, 13 goals. They did not let him play on the Senegalese national team in the Olympics, which is a very big disappointment to me, because I thought this team was very talented, and if he played, you never know, they could have made it deep. And for a country coming off a horrible tournament in the African Cup of Nations, where they're expected to be in the finals and didn't even make it out of the group stage, I really hoped he would play. But do you think this is going to kind of continue for Cisse? Is he going to be a guy who now he has a whole season to prove himself? Are we looking at maybe a 20-25 goal scorer for this Newcastle squad? Yeah, well, obviously, if you went on the basis of what happened last year, yeah, you would have to say that. But, I'm always very dubious about first-year players and how to play, and to get a half a season and to play so well, and you try to translate it into a full season. Newcastle outperformed any expectations that anybody had of them last year, except maybe their strongest fans. But I don't think Newcastle are going to have the same kind of a year this year that they had last year. I think there's got to be a fall off.
Yeah, I mean, last year, towards the end of they kind of fell off actually towards the end of the season, but about a month or two before the end of the season, they were just playing amazing football. It was very exciting to watch them play. I believe, my memory, they tied Man United in a very important game for them. And, I think it'll be interesting to see how they play. You said their fans are very loyal fans. This is a very proud club. They've had success in the past. Their stadium's very big, and the fans want to win. I mean, obviously, fans in other clubs want to win too, but they believe they should win. I don't know if fans, in the smaller clubs think they should be top 5, but they're a team that wants to be in the top 5 and play European football. Let's talk about some of the interesting transactions this summer. A really cool one, I thought, maybe not cool, but just interesting, from Dortmund, that is, in Germany, Kagawa, who really been a very important player in Germany the last year. Of course, they won last year. So do you think he's going to fit into Sir Alex's system? He's very young, 23 years old. He's been playing well in the exhibition games. We know from the past that doesn't mean much, but what are you expecting out of the Japanese player?
Oh, I think he will fit in. I mean, Ferguson doesn't make many mistakes when it comes to buying young players. Okay, he's made a few mistakes in the past with goalkeepers, but as a rule, Ferguson goes after somebody like he went after Kagawa. I mean, he definitely has a future at Old Trafford. It may take him a while to get bedded in. As you said, he is a young player. It's a different league. He's going to fit into a different system. And there will be a certain amount of responsibility on his shoulders. I think one of the things that's probably going to help him is the fact that Darren Fletcher, looks like he's going to be able to come back and he's going to be fit to play for Manchester United. Hasn't played for them since last November. So in a sense, this is a kind of a bonus signing for Ferguson, one player coming back who has proved that he can play football. Fletcher is a good football captain of Scotland.
Right.
I mean, it was reported that he was never going to play again because of the disease he had, the colitis or whatever it is. And
Colitis, yeah.
This is big news. So I think playing alongside of a player like Fletcher, I think this Japanese player is only going to get much better.
Right, and actually he played last night, I believe, in an exhibition game. So, yeah, what you're saying, it appears he's going to be ready to play. What do you think of Wayne Rooney? I'm waiting for him. I mean, I know he's a superstar. I know he's a star, but I want to see more out of him. I don't know why I say that, and I say it every year, but do you think what are we going to see out of Wayne this year?
Oh, I say you'd see him around. I mean, if it's Rooney and Van Persie now, people are saying, well, how are they going to share the ball? How are they going to play off one another? I mean, I think that Wayne Rooney proved that he can play with somebody who may be a superstar. I mean, he played with Ronaldo and he sacrificed himself with Ronaldo. Wayne Rooney was one of the reasons why Ronaldo was so successful at Manchester United. He can do the same for Van Persie. He's done the same with Chicharito. I mean, Wayne Rooney, you're going to get your between 15 20 goals every year of him in all competitions. And you're going to have a combative player who goes out and he tries to lead the line. And yes, there is a feeling that maybe Wayne Rooney should score more goals, and maybe he will. But I still think that when Sir Alex starts writing the team sheet every Saturday, the first player that goes on that team sheet is Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, he does put up the goals. There's always this feeling deep down that you want to see more from him because he has so much talent. We're on right now with ESPN's Tommy Smith. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, so let's quickly just go around Europe and recap or maybe preview what's going to happen. We just did a 15 minutes about the Premier League. Let's move to La Liga. You know what, Tommy? I'm tired of the Real Madrid Barca, so let's talk about who are some teams that could be in third or fourth place because I feel like no one gets credit in this league outside of Real and Barca in the media, and that's not a knock to you. I hope you don't take it personally, but there's other teams in this La Liga, and I understand why so many people focus on Real and Barca, but there are other teams. So can you give us a couple, maybe a team or two that we should look out for this year?
Well, Valencia are always a team that you look out for. I mean, they're always a team that's going to be in the thick of who's going to get third or fourth. That's the problem with La Liga. You know, when you do talk about it, you can't talk about first and second because there are only two teams that are probably going to achieve that. I mean, one team that I would expect to bounce back after, not having a great season last year is Atletico Madrid. They're a team that certainly could bounce back a bit. I would hope that they would bounce back a bit because, they haven't done anything. And after that, I mean, Malaga, I thought were going to be a good team, but for whatever reason, the wheels have fallen off the wagon. Athletic Bilbao seem to have problems as well. The financial situation in Spain is just dire.
Right.
And I'm not sure how it's going to affect teams, but it can't be good for them. But it's Barcelona and Real Madrid again, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be, a very exciting season. Of course, they're going to be playing in about 10 days, or next week. Let's move on now to Serie A. Are Juventus the favorites, Tommy, after a very impressive season last year? Pirlo obviously is older, but he rejuvenated his career, kind of stuck it in AC Milan's face, had a great World Cup. Are they the favorites?
Yeah, I would think they are. I would think that Juventus are favourites despite all the problems that Conte had. I mean, he's going to be suspended for a long time. He's going to appeal it, obviously, but I think he's going to be suspended for a long time. The good news for Juventus is it's only a touchline ban, so he can train the team and select the team and do everything with the team except make changes during the game. So I think it'll come down to Juventus and AC Milan, and I thought AC Milan were going to give them a really good run for it last year. That didn't. I don't see things improving for AC Milan this year, so I would think that the grand old lady will be the top old lady again in Italy.
And Tommy, we haven't had you on since all that stuff with AC Milan when they pretty much got rid of their two best players for a ridiculous amount of money from PSG. Do you support that decision, Tommy? If you were in the shoes of AC Milan, would you have taken the money or would you have tried to keep them no matter what?
Well, I would have tried to keep them, but obviously I'm not looking at the books and I'm not looking at all the red ink that's on the books. And AC Milan obviously made a very conscious decision that hey, we just can't afford to keep them, that it could be the ruination of our club. And sometimes the bigger picture doesn't always be as apparent to fans as the small picture is. The small picture is they went. The big picture is maybe if they didn't go, maybe AC Milan can have all kinds of problems. And, people tell me, oh, no, that'll never happen. The one thing I would say is if I came on this program 5 years ago and said to you that Rangers in Scotland were going to be playing where they are nowadays, you would have sent a man with a white coat, he would have locked me up and thrown the key away because there was no way it could happen.
Right.
It did happen. So anything is possible. So I think it was a huge decision on their part to let them go, and a very disappointing decision for the fans.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say it. There's been a lot of groups out there calling for the heads. But at the same time, let's kind of move on to France and got to talk about this PSG team, Paris Saint-Germain. A lot of buzz not buzz, I mean, it's kind of obvious. They're trying to kind of be the next Man City, buying all these players owned by, I believe, is someone in Dubai or Qatar or one of those Arab nations with oil. Do you think this team is going to be competing in the Champions League in the next few years for a title, or is this a project that's going to take a while, or what are your thoughts on all of that?
It's very difficult to see PSG becoming a power when you look at the tradition of the teams that you're going to have to overpower. And okay, money does buy a lot of good players, but we're back to the same situation. Does money buy a team? It buys a great group of individuals. Will they play well together? Do they become a team? Is the tradition there? I don't think so. I think Paris Saint-Germain will be a team that we all talk about. We saw how difficult a year they had last year. Okay, they didn't have as good a team as they had this year, but already they've had struggles this year. They've played a game and they have struggles. I mean, they certainly are a work in progress. And who knows, maybe 4 or 5 years from now we might be talking about Paris Saint-Germain as a team that might win the Champions League. I don't see it now. I don't see it this time around.
And Tom, you've been covering soccer for a long time. You've
Just leave out one of those longs, will you?
No, I didn't mean it that way. But I meant to say you've been around the game for a long time. And what do this is a question I was looking forward most to asking you. What are your thoughts on these teams dishing out $1 billion to win, like Man City? I mean, do you support that? Do you obviously Man United also spends a lot of money, but these teams that come out of nowhere get bought by rich owners and then just dish out enormous amounts of money? Did that happen back 15, 20 years ago? Is the game changing money-wise? I'm really interested. I'm sure our listeners are very interested to get your thoughts. You're very, of course, a well-respected journalist. You've been around football for a while. So what are your thoughts on what's going on in the game right now?
Well, my mom had a saying which covers it. She always said, a fool and their money are easily parted. And I think that's what it is. It's fool's gold.
Right.
I mean, you go and you're spending millions and millions and millions to try to buy a championship. And okay, if you support that team, it's good for you. But, what is the long-term prognosis in situations like that? What is going to happen to Man City in 10 or 15 years? You look back over these teams, you look back over 100 years, and they've always managed to survive without spending all that big money. Maybe they haven't won anything, but is winning the be-all of everything? I mean, I think it's lunacy. I think it's absolute lunacy when you see countries where people are finding it very, very difficult to put food on their table. The teams are going along and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to buy football players to play in games that the people who can't put the food on the table are going to be asked to support. I just think it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. In my day, football was always a reflection of what was going on in your community. The team was part of your community. If you lived in the right side of Manchester, you supported Man City. If you lived in a certain part of Manchester, you supported United. It was the same with London. You supported Spurs or Arsenal. There were community things. And yes, there was always an outside influence. But this thing of just throwing boatloads of cash at it, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, last year I was watching a lot of, in Israel, we get all the Serie A, and there were some times where the Roma Stadium was a quarter full or half full because people just simply in Europe right now can't afford to go. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if more people decide to buy these teams, more of these guys with the oil decide to buy more and more teams and just start dishing out the money, because you've got to think to yourself first, this money could be used for a lot more valuable things. Before we let you go, Tommy, we were going to put you on the spot and have you predict, and we're going to remind you this throughout the EPL, who you think will be in the top 4.
The top 4, I think it'll be United, City, Chelsea, and Liverpool. United, City, Chelsea, and Liverpool.
Wow, wait, so you are putting Liverpool in the Champions League?
Yes.
Wow, I got to hear, I have not heard this yet. Why do you think so?
I just have a gut feeling. I mean, I've been wrong before, and I probably will be wrong many, many times again in the future. But I just have a gut feeling that Liverpool, they'll be better than they were last year. And they could have made it last year or this year. I just happen to feel that they'll get the job done.
Wow, okay. Great stuff there. Tommy Smith, always a pleasure having you on. We're very happy to hear you enjoyed your vacation. And, of course, we are already looking forward to having you on our program again.
Okay, my friend, it's very good to be on with you, and I wish everybody the very, very best. And I was delighted that our game last night was replayed in Israel. It's nice to know we have a lot of fans there as well.
Absolutely. Tommy, have a good day, and we'll speak with you soon.
Take care.
Thanks, you too. All right, ESPN's Tommy Smith. I missed him. He's really a great guy. He's not scared to tell you what he thinks, and I was really the question I asked him. Obviously, didn't mean to say you've been around the league for a very, very long time in a way where I was saying he was old. But he's a very, very big journalist. He's been covering soccer. He's really helped make soccer important in the U.S. And I completely agree. These teams spend billions of dollars on making these soccer teams right when Europe right now is a giant mess. I mean, I know Americans think America's a mess, but unemployment rate in Spain and in Greece is just horrendous, and people are struggling to provide for their family. And Tommy said it right. He's spending hundreds and hundreds of $1 million. I don't know. I guess you could say the same thing about the Yankees. But if you notice, though, the Yankees have cut down on some of their money in the last few years. Some teams have cut down because they just don't want to spend that kind of money. But no disrespect to the Arab leaders, that oil money is always going to be there for a long time. And they spend $1 billion when their family's worth $100 billion. You know, some of these royal families in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, $1 billion, Ari, is not a big deal.
It certainly is not.
I mean, you know, $1 billion to the Yankees is a big deal. I mean, whatever you want, that it is. $1 billion to this family that owns Man City and PSG. It is not a big deal. And people out there might start chatting us now or Facebooking us and saying, Rafi, you're crazy. No, you have no idea. Look up the stats. I mean, some of these people make $40 million a day or something, or a minute or 5. The stats are crazy. Obviously, I don't want to say any of them. And put my name behind it because I don't like to do that. But look up the stats and you'll see that they're making millions and millions of dollars a day, and that $1 billion really is nothing. I mean, it's nothing. And not to mention, these people are all relatives. They're all one family, and you put their net worth together, it's an enormous amount. The oil is going to be there for a while. It may not be there in 100 years, but it's still going to be there for the next 10 years. So Tommy made a lot of great points. It was a blast having him on. We of course, look through the EPL. We looked through Germany. We didn't look through Germany. We didn't have time. But we looked through Spain. We didn't talk about who's going to win the La Liga because that's just boring, in my opinion. We talked about Italy. We talked about a lot of moves going on. Kagawa joining Man United. A blast to have him on. Very exciting to have him on. It'll be really interesting to see what happens this year. Of course, we'll have Tommy throughout the year. He's a very, very nice guy and been very loyal to our station, Ari.
And he's a member of the 13th tribe.
He's a member of the 13th tribe. He said it at first when he came on in April. He's been on every month since. You heard him. He's a great guy. And, we're running over our show right now. So I'm going to give kind of a preview for next week. And then we are going to wrap it up. And we have Ari and I have a call to make to Ami Monson. If you're listening out there, Ami, we're going to be calling you.
We'll be calling you about 10 minutes. So don't
10
worry.
minutes. We have some interesting news up on our Israel Sports Radio page about a big Jews making sports. We're not going to announce it here, but we've heard from some people that this might be happening. So check out our page at, www.facebook at, I think it's Israel Sports Radio page, or just if you're on Facebook, go to type in Israel Sports Radio and join our news and media and publishing page and like us, or check us out. I believe we're putting the news up on Twitter.
Yes.
We will, at Israel Sports Rad, not EO, Rad. I'm not sure why that happened. Ari, why did that happen, Ari?
Because there's only a certain amount of characters you can put in Twitter.
Oh, interesting. Even for the name.
Yeah, well, that's or Israel Sports Radio wasn't available. It must have.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound. Maybe Israel Sports Radio wasn't available.
We definitely wanted Israel Sports Radio. We got this 2 years ago, and that was the closest we could go.
Israel's rad. Well, it's back from the 70s and 80s when they said everything was rad, or radical. But anyway, yeah, let's give you a little breakdown for next week. We're just writing down now Tommy Smith's predictions for the EPL, because we're going to remind him what he said on our station when we have him on. He said Man City, Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. So we're writing that down right now. We're opening our calendar to break it down for you. A great week this week. Radio Mike was in the house yesterday. Ari enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah, it was great. And by the way, I was doing a little research. Now, of course, I have my own personal Wikipedia page. Now, Israel Sports Radio has also their personal Wikipedia page. Or not personal, their own for the station. Someone put in, I don't know who did this, but I'm going to read you this right now live in the air. Raphael doesn't know about this.
I do not. Is this a good news?
Oh, it's just kind of funny.
Oh, it's funny. Okay.
At the bottom, it says, Israel Sports Radio fans call in frequently to participate in the conversations. Notably, Radio Mike, an Ashkenazi Jew from Kew Garden Hills, calls in regularly to contribute a unique insight to the conversation.
That's hilarious. Maybe it's Radio Mike.
We don't know if I have a feeling it was one of Radio Mike's boys or something, because Radio Mike doesn't seem to be the type of person who would hack into a Wikipedia page like me, like yours truly.
Yeah.
But someone did that. So I just found that out like 30 seconds ago. So that's pretty
cool. Yeah, it says we're located in Top PO. We might want to change that.
Yeah, this whole page needs to be updated.
Yeah, we're going to update our page. And maybe one day I'll get a page. Who knows? But anyway, next week, next week the 20th, Greg Forbes, we're going to talk about Super Bowls. Ari's going to love that. He's covered 40 Super Bowls in his career. I believe he just retired from USA Today. Rob Kennedy, we're going to talk about college basketball. It's that time of the year, kind of. Not really, but I just felt like saying that. Steve Simmons we're going to have on. And we're going to have on from Goal.com Daniel Edwards to talk about a lot of great stuff. Jordan Cohen from the AP. We haven't had anyone on from the AP, which is very odd since we've had a lot of people on. John Weissman, who used to do write for ESPN LA and has covered the Dodgers and now is doing his own thing. Brian Farley, let's check this one out. This is our weird interview of the week, and we always have one. But interesting, I'm not even going to say weird. Netherlands baseball coach, head baseball coach, Brian Farley of the Netherlands. We're going to talk about the World Baseball Classic in Israel because he actually wanted us to talk about that, which is interesting. Mark Robbins from ESPN. That's going to be a big day for us. Isaac Lohnrikon, who is the play-by-play man for the Clippers. A lot of, they're heading in for a big season. They're hoping Chauncey's going to be healthy. Chauncey, Chris, Blake. They added some guys. Who did they add? They added some big names. Caron Butler, I believe, and they had him last year. Well, hold on. Let's tell you real quick. They added some really big names. So I think they're going to be, last year, what were they at? 4 seed, Ari? They played the Grizzlies.
Well, they added Chris Paul, correct?
No, they did that last year.
Last year? Oh, you mean
they made some
very,
let's, hold on. We're going to find it for you. But last year they played the Grizzlies, and they had that crazy comeback.
Yeah, we
happened to have Chris Wallace the next day on the show. That was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, I was really hoping hard for Memphis that they were going to pull that off, and we could tell. Chris.
Jamal Crawford.
Okay.
Who's been around the league. And Lamar Odom. Those were the two guys I was thinking of. Lamar Odom, who played for the Clippers back in the day. Right, Ari? I think in...
way back, yes. You're correct. He was.
Rookie
I think he was drafted by them.
He was in 09.
And then he went out to the Heat at one point, and then was in the Shaq trade.
Wait, he was a high school. Oh wait, no, he did play basketball. Rhode Island. Okay. Anyways, yeah, we're gonna have him on. Dave Cohen, we're gonna have on, who wrote a great book about Jewish baseball players and is a voice of Georgia State. And then Ari Bluestein, of course, Ari Bluestein and Kanari and Jim Williams. Oh, Jim's not on our schedule right now, but we'll add him. Jerry Coleman is a great fan and friend of ours from Fox Sports Baltimore to break down the Orioles who are staying in the hunt, Ari.
Yeah, they're hanging in there. They're the toughest division in baseball, in my opinion.
Right.
As you mentioned.
Or the West.
Yeah, right. Great point that on the air that either the three teams could come out of the AL East, could come out of the AL West, though, for the playoffs.
Yeah. And then Harvey Fromer to finish the week. Harvey Fromer next time this week will be on with us, and we're going to talk to him about. By the way, everyone should check out our new website. He wrote a great blog about the player who just died. Pardon me for not knowing.
Johnny Pesky.
Johnny Pesky, of course, I knew that. Just died. Very, very great. I mean, we're very honored, right, Ari, to have Harvey be he's going to now start blogging, not for us exclusively, obviously, but we're going to put up all of his blogs on our website. He gave us permission. So it's a very big deal for us because he's one of the most respected baseball historians in our generation. And he wrote an amazing article called Remembering Johnny Pesky. So everyone should check that out on our website, of course. I'll be doing some blogs there, but really check out Harvey and Clonari. Those two will be our main guys this year. And we're looking for others if anyone out there is interested.
Yes, indeed. Contact us. I mean, you have to submit a resume and some blogs, and we'll see if it's good material and good enough to come on the site. But we will open up the opportunity.
Right, absolutely. And then we're still working on the schedule for August. We need to get on that at the end of August, that is. But we do have some people, and we have Jim Williams. I was going to say James Williams. And, of course, Ari and Clonari. We should have them on together one. The Ari and Clonari show.
Maybe. Who knows
That'd be
what'll happen
cool.
in the future.
Andy West, though, is a credited journalist with Barcelona Beyond. Lisa Winston from the Baseball Digest talked about the minor leagues. And working on a lot of interesting interviews. This last week could be very big. Howie Roseman from the Eagles, Kevin Youkilis from the White Sox, Ali Raisman from the USA Gymnastic team, who played Javi Nagila and dedicated her medals to
the 72 Munich.
And there's another guest. And Larry Brown. And we're waiting to hear about Larry Brown. So this could be a very big week for us. So even though there's no guests now, we'll fill up the spots, of course. We do it big on Israel Sports Radio. New website, new beginnings, and anyway.
Oh, quick thing before I end the show. Wanted to give a plug to my friend Baruch Benjamin Spear, who has his new podcast up, and I give that plug because I'm on it. It's called The Deep End. I did the show with him on Friday, so I'm there for the whole half hour with Baruch and his wife, Shada. So check that out. It's right on my Facebook. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you can click on that. Or you go to iTunes and you look up The Deep End, and it's Baruch's show. I want to thank everyone who was on today. We had a great show. We kicked it off with the Kabe Rishon Letzion's AJ Mitnick, who discussed the Israeli Super League. We then went to CBS Sports Baseball senior writer Danny Knobler, gave us some great insight on the current status of Major League Baseball. Of course, Melky's suspension and the perfect game last night by Felix Hernandez. Then it was a major honor and treat to have on the former general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Fred Clare. World Series champions in 1988. Fred, of course, brought in Kirk Gibson, who had that home run in Game 1 in the bottom of the ninth that just devastated the A's. The A's were done. The series was over after Game 1 because a man who could barely walk hit a home run off one of the greatest relievers of all time in Dennis Eckersley. And we wrap things up with ESPN's Tommy Smith. He is Irish, so he is member of the 13th tribe. Stay tuned next week as we'll have a lot of great guests and great stuff. But that's it for tonight. God bless and good night.